161. The Jackdaw and the Ravens. A jackdaw who grew larger in size than the other jackdaws disdained their company. So he took himself off to the ravens and asked if he could share his life with them. But the ravens, unfamiliar with his shape and his voice, mobbed him and chased him away. So, rejected by them, he went back to be with jackdaws. But the jackdaws, outraged at his defection, refused to have him back, and thus he was an outcast from the society of both jackdaws and ravens. It is similar with people. Those who abandon their own country in preference for another are in low esteem there for being foreigners, but despised by their compatriots because they have scorned them. 162. The Jackdaw and the Birds. Wishing to establish a king of the birds, Zeus set a date for summoning them all before him for comparison. He would choose the most beautiful one to reign over them. The birds went off then to the shallow water near the shore of a river to wash. Now the jackdaw, realizing his ugliness, went around gathering up the feathers which fell from the other birds, which he then arranged and attached to his own body. Thus he became the most handsome of all. Then the big day arrived, and all the birds presented themselves before Zeus. The jackdaw, with his motley adornment, was among them, and Zeus voted for him to be the royal bird on account of his beauty. But the other birds, outraged at this decision, each pulled out the feather that had come from him. The result was that the jackdaw was stripped and once again became just a jackdaw. Likewise with men who have debts. As long as they possess the wealth of other people, they seem to be somebody. But when they have paid their debts, they find that they are once again their old selves. 163. The Jackdaw and the Pigeons. A jackdaw, espying some well-fed pigeons in a pigeon-rearing aviary, whitened his plumage and joined them to share some of their food. So long as he stayed silent, the pigeons took him to be one of their own kind and approved of him as he mingled among them. But then, for a moment, he forgot himself and let out a cry. Upon hearing his unfamiliar voice, the pigeons chased him away. So, having become familiar with how sumptuously the pigeons fared, he now had to return to the jackdaws. But the jackdaws didn't recognize him anymore because of his color, and they rejected him and wouldn't allow him into their company either. So, having wanted the food of both, he now had neither. This fable shows that we ought to be content with our lot. It also tells us that not only does covetousness serve for nothing, but it often causes us to lose that which we already possess. 164. The Jackdaw who Escaped. A man trapped a jackdaw and, attaching a flaxen thread to its foot, gave it to his child. But the jackdaw could not resign himself to living in captivity. He took advantage of an unguarded moment and flew off back to his nest. But the thread got caught up in the branches and the bird couldn't fly away. On the point of death, he said, "How wretched is my lot! For, not being able to bear slavery to man, I was unaware that I was depriving myself of my life." This fable could be addressed to men who, in wishing to defend themselves against moderate dangers, may be throwing themselves unawares into more deadly peril. 165. The Raven and the Fox. A raven stole a piece of meat and flew up and perched on a branch with it. A fox saw him there and determined to get the meat for himself. So he sat at the base of the tree and said to the raven, "Of all the birds, you are by far the most beautiful. You have such elegant proportions, are so stately and sleek. You were ideally made to be king of all the birds. And if you only had a voice, you would surely be the king." The raven, wanting to demonstrate to him that there was nothing wrong with his voice, dropped the meat and uttered a great cry. The fox rushed forward, pounced on the meat, and said, "O raven, if only you also had judgment, you would want for nothing to be the king of the birds." This fable is a lesson to all fools. 166. The Raven and Hermes. A raven who was caught in a snare promised the god Apollo that if he could get free, he would offer some frankincense to him. But when his wish was granted, he forgot his vow. Later, caught in another snare, the raven abandoned Apollo to address his plea to the god Hermes, to whom he promised a sacrifice. But Hermes replied to him, "O wretched raven, how can I trust you, who have disavowed your first master and cheated him?" When one shows ingratitude towards a benefactor, one can no longer count on help from others in times of need. 167. The Raven and the Snake. A raven who was short of food espied a snake sleeping in the sun. He swooped down, seized it, and flew away with it. But the snake twisted round and bit him. And the raven said, as he was about to die, "How unlucky I was to find a windfall of such a kind that it would murder me." One could say that this fable applies to the man who discovers a treasure that threatens his life. 168. The Sick Raven. A sick raven said to its mother, "Pray to the gods, mother, and don't weep." The mother said, "My child, which of the gods would take pity on you? Is there one among them from whom you have not stolen food?" This fable shows that those who make many enemies in life will not find friends in their hour of need. 169. The Crested Lark. A crested lark caught in a snare lamented, "Alas, what an unlucky bird I am! I have not stolen anything from anyone, neither money nor gold nor anything precious. It is only a little grain of wheat that has caused my death." This fable applies to those people who, for the sake of a paltry profit, expose themselves to a great danger. 170. The Chough and the Raven. The chough became envious of the raven because he gave presages and omens to men, being a bird of augury who foretold things to come. He resolved to attain the same status. So, seeing some travellers pass by, he went and perched on a nearby tree and let out great cries. Hearing this, the travellers turned round, startled. But one of them spoke up. "Come on, friends, let's continue our journey. It's only a chough. His cries are not an omen." It is also like this with men. Those who compete with rivals stronger than themselves will not only be unequal to them, but they will also become a laughing stock. 171. The Chough and the Dog. A chough offered up a sacrifice to Athena and invited a dog to the sacrificial banquet. The dog said to him, "Why are you so lavish with these useless sacrifices? The goddess actually detests you and is on the point of discrediting your omens and portents." To which the chough replied, "But it is precisely because of this that I offer sacrifice to her. I know she is badly disposed to me in this way, and I want to be reconciled with her." Likewise, many people don't hesitate to help their enemies because they are afraid of them. 172. The Snails. A ploughman's child was baking some snails. Hearing them sputtering, he said, "Stupid creatures, your houses are on fire, yet you sing." This fable shows that everything one does inopportunely is reprehensible. 173. The Swan mistaken for a Goose. A wealthy man kept a goose and a swan together, not for the same purpose, but the one for his voice and the other destined for the table. When the time came for the goose to meet his fate, it was night and it became impossible to distinguish between the two birds. But the swan, who had been caught by mistake instead of the goose, began to sing as a prelude to his own demise. His voice was recognized and the song saved his life. This fable demonstrates how music can cause death to be delayed. 174. The Swan and his owner. It is said that swans sing when they are about to die. Now, a man came across a swan for sale, and knowing by hearsay that this was a very melodious creature, he bought it. One day, when he was giving a dinner, he went and fetched the swan and urged it to sing during the feast. The swan remained silent, but soon after, sensing that he was going to die, he sang a dirge to himself. His master, upon hearing this, said to him, "If you will only sing when you are about to die, I was a fool to request you to sing before. I should have prepared to sacrifice you, and then you would have sung." Thus it happens sometimes that what we don't wish to do out of good grace, we do under compulsion. 175. The Two Dogs. A man owned 2 dogs. The first he trained to hunt, and the second he ordered to guard the house. Now when the one went hunting and caught some game, the master threw a piece of it to the other dog as well. The hunting dog was aggrieved at this and reproached his friend, saying that it was he who had gone out and had a hard time of it on every occasion, while his comrade did nothing yet enjoyed the fruits of his labor. The guard dog replied, "Ah, you should not blame me but our master, for it was he who taught me not to work and to live instead from the work of others." Thus, lazy children are not to blame when their parents have brought them up to be idle. 176. The Starving Dogs. Some starving dogs saw some hides soaking in a river. Unable to reach them, they agreed that between them they would drink up all the water to reach the skins. But it happened that before they reached the skins, the dogs burst from the force of the water they had drunk. Thus, some men, in the hope of a profit, submit to dangerous work but lose it before having obtained the object of their desires. 177. The Man Bitten by a Dog. A man who had been bitten by a dog roamed far and wide looking for someone to heal his wound. Someone told him all he had to do was wipe the blood from his wound with some bread and throw the bread to the dog that had bitten him. To this the injured man replied, "But if I did that, every dog in the city would bite me." Similarly, if you indulge someone's wickedness, you provoke him to do even more harm. 178. The Dog Entertained as a Guest. A man prepared a dinner to entertain a family friend. His dog invited another dog. "Friend," the dog said, "come to the house to dine with me." His guest arrived full of joy and stopped to have a look at all the food laid out, muttering to himself, "Oh, what a godsend for me! I am going to guzzle and give myself such a bellyful that I won't be hungry all day tomorrow." All the while he said this, his tail wagged as he showed his trust in his friend. The cook, seeing his tail go to and fro, seized him by the paws and hurled him out of the window. The dog went home howling. Along the way he met some other dogs. One of them asked him, "How was your dinner?" The dog replied, "I had so many drinks I became completely drunk. I don't even know how I got out of the house." This fable shows that you shouldn't trust those who are generous with other people's fare. 179. The Hunting Hounds and the Dogs. A dog reared in a house was trained to fight wild beasts. One day, when he saw several of them lined up in battle array, he broke loose from the dog collar round his throat and ran off through the streets. Other dogs, seeing him as bulky as a bull, said to him, "Why are you running away?" "I know well," he replied, "that I live amid plenty and have more than enough to eat, but I am always close to death, fighting as I do with bears and lions." Then the other dogs said to each other, "Although poor, we have a good life, for we don't have to fight with lions and bears." It is not necessary to court danger for sumptuous living or vainglory, but, on the contrary, to shun it. 180. The dog, the cock, and the fox. A dog and a cockerel, having made friends, were strolling along a road together. As evening fell, the cockerel flew up into a tree to sleep there, and the dog went to sleep at the foot of the tree, which was hollow. According to his habit, the cockerel crowed just before daybreak. This alerted a fox nearby, who ran up to the tree and called up to the cockerel, "Do come down, sir, for I dearly wish to embrace a creature who could have such a beautiful voice as you." The cockerel said, "I shall come down as soon as you awaken the doorkeeper, who is asleep at the foot of the tree." Then, as the fox went to look for the doorkeeper, the dog pounced briskly on him and tore him to pieces. This fable teaches us that sensible men, when their enemies attack them, divert them to someone better able to defend them than they are themselves.